So my name is Michal Matlon, and I work with user experience at HB Revis. And that mostly means taking all the psychology of architecture know-how that exists globally and also that we create in our company and helping to apply it to create spaces where people are more productive, healthy, satisfied, and many others. And we already had a similar question here today, but who of you have trouble focusing at work? And you are not alone, because not being able to focus or being distracted at work is also one of the most common complaints of employees at our clients' companies. And it's one of the reasons is because when we were speaking to anyone in the last years about how to create office spaces, we've been hearing a lot of these three words, and I always mess up the order. So let me guess, it's collaboration, cooperation, collaboration, and communication. And we've been hearing a lot of these words. And this led to removing all the walls and barriers that separate us from each other in space. And so we've been seeing a lot of spaces like this one, or this one. Do you know what company that is? Yeah, it's Facebook. And you know that these companies are often perceived, well, not as much today, but often are perceived as inspirational to others. And so it also led to this widely quoted number that around 70 to 80% of spaces in the UK or US have some kind of open plan space in them. And these numbers continue. So you have already seen this number. The average office worker, according to this study, seems to be able to focus only for 11 minutes before being distracted. And it takes around another 23 minutes to start up, to get into the flow and fully focus again. And what we might be dealing here with is some sort of a broken promise. Because the two main reasons why we've been building open spaces in the last years were first, cost saving, and the other one was enabling more communication and collaboration. So let's explore these two promises. We see in another study that it might be that around 28% of time of an average office worker is interrupted work, whether by distractions or technology or lack of resources. And if you do a very simple calculation, this is extremely simplified, you find out that if you have a company with around 500 workers with an average British salary, you lose more than £3.5 million only on these distractions. And I'm not even counting the full value employees are creating. So you might know it might be anywhere between 4 times the salary to 8 times the salary. I'm not counting the possible reduction in work quality or satisfaction or well-being. Okay, so it seems that maybe the first promise of cost saving might not add up because, yes, you might save in the short run, but then in the long run you might lose even more money. And the other promise was that these spaces should enable more communication. So it seems, according to some studies, that yes, open space might enable more communication, but the thing is, the communication it creates or supports, it's often a short one and shallow one. So it means you will not find too often your colleagues discussing for 2 or 3 hours how to solve a complex problem in these environments. But this year, and at least I personally would call it a landmark study, or maybe it's just because I like it. But this was a study where, for the first time, smart wireless badges were used to measure objectively the amount of face-to-face interaction people had. And the researchers measured 2 major US companies independently, moving from more closed offices to more open spaces. And the results were really staggering. Because they saw in both of these companies separately that the face-to-face interaction after moving to these open spaces decreased by 70%. The 70%. And the email and other virtual interaction increased by about 20 to 30%. And the researchers explained that this might be because if you put a lot of people together, they will get oversaturated, and it triggers a natural human defense mechanism to withdraw. And so if you don't provide people with barriers in the physical world, they are going to start building barriers in their minds. They're going to start building bunkers, and these bunkers often even have front-facing cannons, because there are some studies which found that actually these spaces can increase uncooperative behavior and conflicts. And now the question is, okay, so why focus is so important? And here I would like to say hello to people from Leesman here today. Many speakers seem to be referring to them like a golden standard. So in the last report, I think it was last year, yes, 2017, they analyzed the data from the first 250,000 surveys that they made globally, and they were comparing companies based on where in the index they scored. And specifically, they were comparing them based on how well they supported focus and collaboration according to their employees. And so this is the boring part. Of course, spaces which supported no cooperation, no focus, they were getting the worst scores. Now, the spaces which were supporting both, according to the employees, they were getting the best scores. But now the interesting part. Spaces which supported only collaboration, but not focus, were still kind of down there in the lowest scores. And spaces which were supporting focus, but not collaboration, were achieving medium to high scores. And this just shows how important focus and individual focused work is for people. So we are hearing a lot about the next generation and millennials. They are just kind of always on the move and meeting and so on. But still, 94% of people said that individual focused work is a very important activity in their day at work. Now, I would like to say hello to people from Gensler. I think they sat somewhere over there. Hello. In 2012, they released a wonderful report, short but very interesting report on focus from their own researchers and surveys, where the conclusion is that focus is the most important activity. Now, why? They say that it might be because when we are collaborating, it might not be really that much about the space we are doing it in. It might be more about who we are collaborating with and how we do that. While for focus, space in which we do that is extremely important. And we are very sensitive to the space in which we want to do this focused work. Now, a series of studies called the Coding War Games, which you might also, some of you know probably because they're more than, I think, 20 years old. These researchers studied programmers, and they were looking at the differences between the best and worst performing software development companies and the best and worst performing programmers within them. And they compared these two groups of people, and they found that really there was no major differences between kind of different programmers in a single company, but there were quite large differences between individual companies. And they found three main factors that separated these two groups from each other. So they differed most in these three things. And these three things were the amount of privacy people in this company, in these companies could afford, the ability to be distraction-free, and the size of their personal workspace. Now, when we talk about focus or privacy, we're often imagining just individual focusing. But the thing is that privacy and focus is also very important for groups. So in this case, it was factory workers. But it seems that the productivity, the output of a group can decrease as much as 10 to 15% just by not having enough privacy. Now, there might be two reasons, or both of them. The first one is that if a group has enough privacy, they have a tendency to experiment more, to try out new methods of accomplishing their tasks, to do something that maybe if they were constantly observed and judged, they would be too afraid to do. But with enough privacy, they would be brave enough to do that and maybe arrive with higher efficiency. And the second reason is that if groups don't have this privacy, they have a tendency to develop kind of their own language, a certain cipher that will not allow people from outside the group to fully understand what they are talking about. And this, of course, if you have to cipher and decipher, it kind of slows down the work, decreases the efficiency. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. It looks at focus and what Cal Newport calls deep work from a more individual perspective, but it's also very interesting. And he describes that as people have less and less ability to focus because of space, but also because of the technologies we use and kind of decreasing focus skills, the ability to focus as an individual or within an organization becomes much more rare. And so whoever as an individual or whoever as an organization is able to achieve this focus will get a huge advantage over the others. And he says, this is a nice sentence, that to produce at peak performance at anything, if you want to be the best at anything, you need to be able to work for extended periods with full concentration on a single task, free from distraction. And the question is, okay, so what can we do with this? The first thing is that we need to balance the attention and the importance we give to focus versus collaboration. Because in the last years, the scales have been tipped to the side of collaboration. The second thing is that we need to understand what drives focus. And apart from your personal makeup, so also what the other speakers have been speaking about when it comes to the differences between how we can filter sounds and so on. So there's this personal makeup, then there's the learned skills to focus, but then there's space. And the most important characteristic of space when it comes to focus is privacy. And here I would like to refer to Clara Weber, a researcher who has presented at the Spring Research Summit in March, I think. And the presentation was very important. And what I realized, what I remembered, is that really privacy is a four-way lane. So we often hear about this acoustic privacy, and that we are disturbed by sounds coming from outside, from, let's say, our colleagues. But then it's also important that to achieve this full focus, this full privacy, we need not to be heard by our colleagues. Okay, so if I want to create a presentation and I need to practice, then I can't be walking like this through the office and just saying the words with my colleagues hearing whatever I say. And there's also this other part, the visual privacy, which I think we really underestimate. Because the first thing is that to achieve this full privacy, we need to be protected from seeing our colleagues, actually. Because we also have, the brains have tendency to notice any movement, and especially then if it's people, and maybe people relevant to us, it starts to wonder, okay, so who's this person? Did they come to fire me? What they are doing here? But also then, and that's I think the most underestimated factor, is the other side of the visual privacy. And so it's important so that our colleagues and other people don't see us when doing the work. Okay, so in many spaces, for example, there might be these focus rooms or focus booths or telephone booths. But what you often see is that they have glass walls. So yes, they provide you with the acoustic privacy, but not the visual privacy. And this is important to understand. And so the next step would be to maybe sometimes actually put walls in your designer toolkit, because they might be quite useful. In some cases, right? Not always, but sometimes yes. And maybe sometimes we have been afraid to use them just because they are not so cool. And the next thing is that to really build spaces that support the work done in them, we need to first thoroughly analyze and deeply understand the needs of people working there, not just on the organizational level, but also on the group level, and in some cases maybe also on the individual level. And so we need to start creating spaces which fit to the activities and needs people in them, as well as this weirdly shaped cheese fits this weirdly shaped bread, or as well as this bird fits into this hole in the tree. And you might have heard about this approach already. You have probably heard about this under the name of activity-based design. Yeah. Now, I would like to suggest a slight change in the mindset, because we have often seen that activity-based design spaces are designed based on some kind of preconception of how such space should look like. For example, at pictures that we want to use for marketing. So very often when you open any report about activity-based spaces, you can see space plans where there's this kind of huge gray area of open space seating, and that's marked like the default or the home bases. And then you have these alternative spaces sprinkled around where people can go if they want to do something different. Now, what I want to suggest is that we actually start thinking about the open space type as something that is on par with all the other space types, not as a default that to which we use then the other space type, but as something that is really working well for a very narrow and specific set of activities, and use it only when we want to support these activities. So, for example, in our case, before we kind of dare to say what is the right amount, what are the right types of space types that should be in your office, we are going through quite a long process. So we do workshops with the managers, with the employees, we do surveys, we do interviews, we use quite a lot of different sensors for different things, either for occupation, or then we are testing quite a lot of new environmental or indoor positioning sensors. We are using ethnographical methods and observations, and only then, after analyzing all this data, we can say that, okay, this space could work for you. And so let's start treating open space or open plan as just another space type. And of course, if you say open plan, it might mean many different things. So it could be this one, but it could be also this one. By the way, this is our new headquarters. We've been designing with Gensler. So when it's finished, I invite you for a tour if you leave me your business card here. But it's in Bratislava, so you would have to fly there. And you can see that the open space here doesn't really look like the one before, because yes, you can design open spaces well, so it removes quite a lot of these disadvantages. You can see many acoustic materials on the ceiling, on the walls, on the carpet. You can see a lot of visual separations, so it makes the space really kind of more cozy and intimate. But it still is an open space. So it doesn't allow this full privacy for full focus. And now I've been telling you about using open space just for narrow set of specific activities. So which might be those activities? I selected 3 types. That there might be many others, but these are which I chose. So the first one would be intense real-time coordination. So imagine a volcano is exploding in your region, and you just need to have a team of perfectly aligned people shouting over each other, and so that everyone knows what the other person is doing. So this would be the first case for open space or open plan. The second case would be low focus, low effort work, which you might also call a mundane work, maybe. So if you have a group of people just copying data from one table to another, then it might be worth giving them an open plan space, because they will appreciate the social environment that they can talk to each other and kind of not get bored. And the third case might be processing work. So here are kind of different cases. For example, if you come to work in the morning and you need to just check your email, sort the pile of files you have on your desktop, or organize your tasks for the day or for the week, this would be the space to do that. But when you want to start replying to some longer emails, when you want to start writing something, creating presentations, thinking, solving problems, analyzing, reading, learning, then you need a different space. You need a space that will fully allow you to focus, that will provide you the privacy that you need to do that. And so I would like to end with this message. It's up to you, managers, consultants, and researchers, to first deeply understand the needs of people in your organization, and to really understand what work is being done there on quite detailed level before you start doing something with your space. And it's up to you, architects, designers, space planners, to create spaces where the first priority will be to enable people and businesses to flourish, and where looking cool or trendy or fashionable or good on pictures will be only an optional side effect of good design, as it was always supposed to be. Thank you.